Hi, y'all. Thanks for joining us here. Welcome. This is the episode called Stories of Victory over Adversity. And this particular segment in that series is called Parenting Your Parents. And again, I'm here with Hugh Garfield Cato, who does happen to be my brother. And we're just going to pick up kind of like from where we left off last episode when we were talking about our parents and being called in to assist them as they were declining in health as a result of dementia, Alzheimer's, and a multitude of other medical issues. But just as an overview, this particular series, the Sunday series, is really about, well, stories of victory over adversity, stories of people being in an adverse situation, but transforming in the midst of that. And our hope is really to gather as much information and opportunities of resources and evidence of resilience so that other people who are in similar or complicated situations in their lives can have a place to go and hear of people's transformation. And so that's really what the Sunday episodes on this channel are all about. And so just so that you know that on a Sunday, you can come to this channel, you can plug in and, be informed about a new situation and a new victory. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and then you'll be notified when we do upload new episodes. But for now, we're just going to jump right in. We were talking last about Mom and Dad Hugh and about about us being called in to assist. And I think we left off really just prior to what I kind of want to touch on right now, and that's their introduction to long-term care. Do you remember that?
Well, what I remember is Mom had absolutely zero interest in going into a long-term care facility.
Yeah.
Dad was dad, and he didn't have, if he had an opinion, he didn't express it.
Yeah.
Mom was pretty vocal about what she didn't want to have happen, which was she wanted to stay home.
Yeah.
So through it, we didn't have to do much with respect to getting them in. I can remember that. We were fortunate in that we had a couple of friends who helped us get them go in there and that. But it was, I would say, what we expected was a whole lot of, resistance.
Yeah, yeah.
And we were fortunate in that there was zero until, there was zero.
Yeah.
The resistance came later.
Yeah. Can we back up just a wee bit? Just about the process of determining that this was where we were going to go in spite of Mom's very vocal declaration that she would never go. How did we, I remember having to contact, the agencies and stuff and say, what is the process for somebody to go into long-term care? But you being the paperwork person, do you remember what that process was like?
Why, for any long-term care facility, what they do is they determine, because, at that time it was what it was, and there was a wait time, but today the wait time is I was speaking to a friend who's going through the same thing with her parents, and they got contacted. They're on the list now. She's saying, I want to say she said like she's looking at a year or two. Now her father has, like, they both need something, but her father is undergoing chemotherapy right now for cancer. So you would think that would make him a priority to get in anywhere, but he's still on a good serious waiting list.
Wow.
When we were going through that, there was a wait list, but we were fortunate, and there were a couple of places that were just being built.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we didn't, when I say fortunate, that's probably an understatement, because we were looking for a place to put so they could share a room together. But again, backing up. So what happens is in our particular case, particularly, well, because we were looking for a place for both of them, but for anybody just going in, there is an assessment done, and there's a determination by that agency as to whether or not there's a need for that person to be taken out of their home. And it could be that the motivation for that assessment is that most people don't want to leave their home.
Yeah.
And so, particularly, like, if I'm sure there are most cases are like ours. It's not the parent wanting to go into a long-term care facility.
Yeah.
It's that there's a necessity for the parent to go into
Yeah.
facility. But that necessity is determined first by whatever family members are providing care initially, and it really comes down to, can they do it anymore?
Yeah.
So that agency comes in, and so that agent comes in at our behest.
Yeah.
When we beckon and ask them to come in and do that.
Yeah.
So then there's an assessment, and then they determine whether or not there's a requirement or a need for the individual to be admitted to the care facility.
Yeah.
And a lot of those, that's based on, can they look after themselves at home?
Yeah.
Right. So
is it specific to, can they look after themselves, or a combination of, can they look after themselves, or do they have resources that can help them look after themselves in their home?
Well, in our particular case, what we did is we had, and again, same thing, agency that provided personal support workers, and they come to your home.
Yeah.
So that's the first step.
Yeah.
So there's one. I would say there are a couple of assessments. The first one being, do they need support at home? So I have another friend who's in the same boat, and he lives in the apartment building with his father. Okay. And he works long hours, and so in his particular case, they had to look for somebody to come in and look after his dad in his apartment while he was there.
Okay.
His father's passed, and he never wound up in a long-term care facility.
Okay.
But it did make it difficult when he got ill, wound up in the hospital, and now he's got to go back home because that hospital is discharging him, and he's in no position to look after himself.
Yeah.
And in terms of personal support workers, well, they're only there for a few hours a day.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's what one of the assessments does, is determines how much time a day you would get in terms of support. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Because it's subsidized to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is through the agencies. And I would have to say that would be the government agencies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in that, then how many hours can we provide for you? And then probably too, because there are private agencies available.
Right.
Right. So if you have the wherewithal, then you could get somebody in there and have them be there 24/7.
Absolutely. And that's money specific. Like, so if you have the resources financially, you can have care in your home at all times. But if you don't have those resources, you're reliant on whatever your current system would happen to be. Because I don't know that it's the same province to province. Even region to region seems to look a little different.
I can say I have absolutely zero idea, because we never looked outside of our region.
Yeah.
Right.
So do you remember what the catalyst was for us when we finally realized, no, we need to act on and move forward with looking at long-term care?
I actually don't.
I remember what it was for me.
See, I wasn't really affected, right? I was leaving, so I was in and
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
There was a day, I know in the previous episode we talked about mom and her cleaning and when in distress, and it was really, really cold outside, and snow had fallen even, and freezing, and mom had she determined that the oven needed to be cleaned. And her way of cleaning the oven was to put baking soda and salt on everything and scrub it down, but you had to burn it off and turn. So she had all the elements on, including the oven. And Dad was in his wandering stage.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, because I was thinking that while you started talking about mom.
Yeah, so I'm standing in the kitchen, close enough to jump in should there be an emergency or a need for mom, but not so close as to piss her off, because you don't want to be doing that. And as I'm standing there, because we had the alarms on the doors, I heard the front door open.
Actually, now I remember that, yeah.
And watched Dad walk out in the freezing weather in his, he didn't even have shoes on.
Yeah.
And no coat, no jacket, nothing, just house clothes. And he starts walking down the street. And I'm standing there watching Dad in this freezing cold wander off, and mom at the stove. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, rock in a hard place.
Like what? And that was the catalyst for me to say, I can't safely make these kind of choices. I can't make these. There needs to be either another person 24/7, or something else has to happen. And that was the recognition of my limitations to keep both of them safe moments, where I knew that every moment was really reliant on both of them being in good space. If both of them were in bad space, we were in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you bring that up, as you were relaying the story about mom with the cleaning of the oven, that my mind went to Dad and his wandering, and I realized, and I didn't remember that these two things happened at the same time.
Yeah.
But while you're telling the story, I remembered, oh, you know what? Dad used to walk out and wander outside, and we had to worry about about him being outside.
Yeah.
So I don't know how often it happened. I'm gonna say, because I don't remember how often it happened, but I'm gonna say that as soon as that happened, it was like, okay, we got to do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty sure it was just a one-off type thing. And
yeah, that particular catalytic moment was only happened once. There were a number of really, really comical moments with Dad in that stupid door. I remember coming home after I picked them up from the adult daycare. And I would always make them a snack before they had dinner. And this particular day, on the ride home, they opted for popcorn. So I made the popcorn. I brought Mom her popcorn downstairs, and I'd heard the door in the back open. So I went out back to say to Dad, your popcorn's ready. And he's like, okay, just put it down. And I'm like, where are you? I can hear you, but I can't see you. And he's like, I'm right here. And I'm like, where? I'm looking all over, and he goes, look up. And I look up, and he climbed like way up into the tree. And
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my God. And I just put the popcorn down and walked away because I'm like, I don't know how you got there.
You don't want to see him come down.
I can't do this. And he, the whole time as I retreated back into the kitchen, was laughing like a little kid.
Yeah, that'd be Dad.
It was so funny. Dad climbing trees. That was a cherry tree. And when he came down, he said, because it was right around the time when the cherries were ripe, and he was always competing with the birds.
To try and, who's going to eat them first?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, that would be it. I mean, and then so consequently, like, with those things happening, so and up to that point, we still had, I'm pretty sure we had PSWs coming in around
yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
And so with that, those two episodes, or that one episode, that's when we contact the agency and we come out and they do the assessment.
Yeah.
And determine whether or not there's a need. So I know part of the assessment is to recognize whether or not that individual how much that individual can look after themselves.
Yeah.
But that assessment also determines, well, like you say, how much care they need, how much like supervised care they need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if family members can't provide it,
yeah,
then they deem you needy.
Yeah. And there was there's a competency piece to that. And
That's just telling time, reading anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of that assessment, that's where that came from. So that assessment involves, if I remember correctly, that one of them was they just have a clock with a drawing or a picture of a clock.
Yeah, an analog clock.
And then they would just ask them to tell time. Number counting, numbers were involved, so on time numbers, reading comprehension.
Yeah.
Right. Probably
and retention. So they give you 3 words, and you had to repeat them back.
Yeah. Some physical tests as well.
Yeah.
Dexterity tests.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it. Like in terms of the assessments, so they're different, and they kind of come at them each one from different angles, so it gives them a good indication of where that person is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So for us, Dad failed miserably.
Mm-hmm.
Mom passed with flying colors. So
yeah. And there was a piece, because there's insofar as the individual is saying no, they don't want to go, then there's a piece of competency. Like, do they have the capacity to make decisions about their physical and mental health? And if they are deemed incapable and incompetent in that regard, then it kicks into the power of attorneys, and then those people would be the ones making that decision. And I think
that's right, because once they're not considered competent, because we have the power of attorneys in place.
Yeah.
So once they determine that it's so you know what, I'm going to say that assessment is really specifically, they don't really look at so much at how much care they need at home.
Yeah.
It's really a competency examination.
Yeah.
And once they've decided that and so you put it there in terms of their being able to make decisions and the decision-making process. And once they've decided, the assessors have decided that this individual can't make competent decisions for themselves.
Yeah.
Then it goes to the person with the power of attorney for care.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, can you look after this person at home?
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Right.
Then this person isn't competent, and we can place this person at home.
Right.
You know?
And then once that determination is being made, you're then on a waiting list. Because I can remember us going to a number of long-term care homes before we landed on this one.
Well, and so what they do is they give you what they suggest. You have the list, and you go check places out.
Mm-hmm.
We've gone to 3 different places.
Mm-hmm.
One locally, and then the other 2 were in another city, in the neighboring city. Excuse me. And we checked all 3. And what was interesting, because at that time, again, there was 2 of the ones that we were looking at were new.
Yeah, yeah.
One was only a month or 2 old.
Yeah.
The other one was probably built within the last year at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
The third one was an original. I'm gonna call it original, but it's an older facility.
Yeah.
So the contrast between the newer ones and this older facilities, the older facility felt like a hospital.
Okay.
Tiled floors throughout.
Yeah.
And not nice tiles.
Yeah.
Not that industrial tile.
Yeah.
Tiles that you see in hospitals.
Yeah.
And like that one was, and again, this one here looked like almost looked like an apartment building, but the building itself was old.
Okay.
At the time, and so we pretty much ruled that one out immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And so a lot of what we were looking at was really specifically to, can you take both our parents in the same room?
Exactly.
We didn't want
that was our, and I remember them saying to us, at best we'd be able to place them on the same floor, and then maybe move them into the same room in a year or 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no. Oh yeah, and we had that movie. What was that movie? The Letter, where he was reading his wife that book all the time, and it turned out that she'd had Alzheimer's. Is it called The Letter or something? That guy, something Ryan. In it.
Who?
Huh? Do you remember it?
Was it a North American? Because I remember an Australian movie that we watched.
Yeah, no, maybe we didn't watch it together. I watched it. I remember going to the theater and seeing it, and I thought it was going to be a love story about something completely other. And then I get there and discover that it's a love story about Alzheimer's, like the wife.
Gordon Vincent.
Huh?
I think that was Gordon Vincent.
Ryan Gosling was in it.
That?
Oh my God! It gutted me. Ugh. And so all I wanted was for Mom and Dad to be in the room, just like the movie. Okay. And yeah, well, movies are movies.
Maybe Gordon Vincent was Ryan Gosling's older self.
Oh.
That's what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I remember, for some reason, I remember a movie with him in it, and he was in the nursing home room. That's where it's So
so it's like, because the movie is 2-parted, right? Yes. So there's them in the nursing room, and I never made the connection until like 3/4 of the way through the movie that this was their older selves. And it's like, what? Oh my God. It was devastating. And you'd have those moments. Anyways, I don't want to spoiler alert for everybody.
Anybody wants to see it.
I told you the whole thing. But it's a good movie. And that was the movie I wanted. That was the story I wanted from Mom and Dad. And so going into the homes was, you know, is this going to be the place where they have their final moment, like as a couple together in the same room and, you know, what have you. But the until we landed on the one that where they eventually went, I can remember that day going and seeing it and walking in, and all the walls are painted in the same color as Mom's place.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was the same paint.
Remember that the one that we found put them in. That was our second choice.
Yeah,
Our first choice was closer to the one in town,
exactly.
and it was phenomenal. It was a really nice place.
I really liked it.
You know, the place that we got them placed in. I mean, again, the place we got them in, it was only about a month old, so it was brand new.
Brand new. They were the first people.
They were among the first residents.
Yeah, and it was that, as difficult as that choice and that move was, where they ended up was ideal for them because they could be in the same room, and the room was really nice and it was brand new.
And the other thing is, because at that time, in order for them to be in the same room, you had an option. It was either a ward, to move into the place, there were two choices. It was a ward or single room. Right. But at that time, most of the facilities, the ward, were 4-person occupancies.
Right.
And that would have been the case if we'd had the one place.
Yeah.
Yeah. The new place, the one that was in town, we couldn't. The truth is, the reason we couldn't get them in there is because we couldn't get them in a room together. Yeah. Right. Whereas the place that they finally went in, they wound up in a room, and that was a room that it's 2-person occupancy. Yeah. Right, and that was the ward. So, you go through in terms of the process. You go through and you check out a few places, and then you give the agency a list of your preferred places. Oh yeah. And then they do the best to get you. Now you give them the agency in terms of 1, 2, 3. Yes. I'm going to say that we didn't even include that hospital-looking one. No. We didn't want them to be in there by default. Yeah. Right. So that's how we would have done it. Yeah. So it came down to the other two, and where we actually eventually put them is the one place that could accommodate our desire to have them stay and have them stay. Yeah. Goodness. So. Yeah. I remember that. And I remember getting the chairs so that we could sit and recline. So you talking about the one I have over here? Yeah. They don't need it anymore. So. Yeah, that'd be the one. I spent many a night sleeping in that chair. That's a great chair. Yeah, many a nights. I want to jump into the sort of the long-term care facility process, like the duration of being there and the benefits and the pluses and the minuses, and really focusing more on the pluses. But before we jump there, what was it like for you emotionally doing that move? For me, emotionally doing that move, to be honest with you, I'm pragmatic. So it was, in terms of making a decision, did I support the decision? 100%. Because when I spoke of the story of Dad and trying to cook that pot pie in the toaster oven. Yeah. Really, we were at the point now where that was the issue. So it became a safety concern for us, and like over and above anything else. Okay, competency is one thing, but it really was a safety concern. So like you say, you talk about the wandering mom and the stove and that, and because we can't be there, can't be watching like steady. Really, you know what? I'll put it like this: because you can't parent-proof your parents' home. Yeah. Right? Because at the end of the day, they get into stuff. Well, Dad climbing that tree, I can tell you, I never saw Dad climbing that tree. I know. In all the years we lived there.
I know.
So it never happened. So, you know, they're in their environment, and they're going to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
So it became, can we afford to take the chance that they don't get into something, or they get into something that's going to be detrimental to their health?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so from that standpoint, I was, I was all for it. I didn't have an issue with them being in a nursing home, because again, what we're really talking about at this point, like for myself personally, I've got a job, wife, kids, as most do, but basically have other responsibilities outside of it. And you've spent those years developing that way of living for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add that piece, looking after your parents in their home.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I can remember, I can say, because I know, you know, in the middle of winter, I'd have to go over there every day,
Yeah.
like when it's snowing, and I have to shovel the driveway.
Yeah.
Unless our neighbors came out with their snowblower.
That's right.
But even that was touch and go, because the neighbors were older than mom and dad.
Yeah.
they're still living in their home, sort of thing. So, I'm making a point of going over there. It wasn't as much of an issue, because it's not like somebody was, you know, in and out of the driveway all the time, like going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I could pick and choose when I went over, but it was that responsibility.
Yeah.
Garbage day, I'd have to go over and deal with garbage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it just became, from my end, that was not an issue.
Yeah.
But it really was about their safety.
Yeah.
And once that was compromised, it was like, okay, this is what we got to do.
Yeah.
And so there was no looking back at that point for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you?
I can remember it. I didn't step into it realizing that this was going to actually consume my life. And I remember making the decision to move in and things, and thinking that we'd have PSWs while I was at work and doing my thing, and I'd come back and pick up and assist in that manner. I didn't realize I'd have to give up work and give up friends and give up everything, that it would literally consume me. And I can remember once I realized that this is it, and accepted that, and then embraced it.
Jumped all over it.
Yeah. Then I suddenly got into the flow of caring for them, and what to do and who to do it with and how to do it, and you know, working at a certain, because you know, I'm quite regimented with care, and so having the charts and the things to say, this is what happens at this time, and this is what we eat, and this is what we do, and this is how it's done, and getting once all the structure was in place, I can remember recognizing that this was, my God, the right decision. And again, for me, it came down to the safety. It came down to their safety and my sanity, right? Because they were being weighed on equal scales, and
it had to. I mean, because again, it boils down to the fact that in terms of in terms of their care. So when you asked me that question, and my response was what it was, which was like, it was easy and practical. It's this. It's a done deal. And that's why I asked you, what about you?
Yeah.
Because you were living it.
Yeah.
And so I could say that if I was in your shoes, I would have been, where do I sign?
Mm-hmm. Oh.
I would have been. That's what it would have been, because although I didn't live in the home with them,
yeah,
I could see the toll it was taking on you.
Yeah.
And so I can say that if I know if I was in your shoes, it would have been like, okay, let's just get this done because I can't do this anymore. Because I mean, let's face it, there were lots of times that, again, we talk about mom and dad being very easygoing and mom being who she was. There was conflict to some degree, even just from within the house, just because of the mom's in her moments, she was aware that she had Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
In her competent moments,
yeah,
because I would say in her incompetent moments, she was unaware. In her competent moments, she was aware.
Yeah, and
of her limitations.
Yeah,
that's the biggest thing. She was aware of her limitations.
Yeah.
But dad always knew his limitations.
Yeah.
There was never an issue. So aside from, okay, fine, he walked outside.
Yeah.
But that's just a product of the fact that he just, in terms of walking outside without shoes and things like that, that's not a limitation thing. That's just a cognition.
Impulse. Yeah.
Right. So he walked outside without shoes on. Well,
yeah.
I mean, this is a man coming from Jamaica and just walks outside barefoot all the time.
Exactly.
So for him walking outside without putting on a pair of shoes, and again, we have to keep in mind that the state where they were in terms of their frame of mind, there would be those lucid moments, and then there are those moments where they're just who they are and who they were. I shouldn't say are, who they were.
Yeah.
And by were, I mean, like, they could just go back to a moment of their childhood.
Exactly.
In that moment. So we have no idea what prompted him to walk outside for the first time ever in the middle of winter without shoes or boots.
I know.
You have no idea.
The beautiful thing is that what's his name, Simon? The neighbor saw Dad and just came out, greeted him, and walked back to the house with him. They talked and they came back up as I'm standing there just freaking out. I see them just walking back and casually chatting and coming up, and I guess Dad just wanted to go down and say hi, and just thought, oh, let me just go. And
he's probably looking out the window, and then he just saw him out there.
Because that was the other thing. Dad was a peeper.
Yeah.
He was always looking out the window and telling me stories about the neighbors. It was hilarious.
Well, some people just call them observers.
He was hilarious.
I asked him,
I said to him one day, I said, Dad, why are you always looking out the window like this? He's like, it's here. Exactly. I remember when they moved in, coming back to the house, utterly exhausted. I don't even remember putting my head on the pillow. I literally just passed out. But the next morning, because we'd gotten into this routine where I would make, I made the breakfast every morning, and I would make Mom's plate in the shape of either a sun or a smiley face or something. I would always make a little pattern, and that's what.
Because she did poached eggs.
Yeah.
Dad had his oatmeal. Mom was poached eggs.
Exactly.
I remember making a poached eggs last time. I love those poached eggs because I started eating poached eggs.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. But prior to that, I never touched them.
Oh, no way. When I woke up that next morning, and I didn't have anybody to make breakfast for. And
we're lost.
Oh my God. And rushed over to the home, and that became my next home. And I remember I got within that month, I got a job at the nursing home across the street, so that I could be close.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
As a matter of fact, and that one was newer than where Mom and Dad were.
Yeah. It was a different kind of facility, and I was
very much a community.
Yeah. But it was really because of that. It was just, I need to, what do I do now? Like, what
Well, how do you fill your time?
now?
How do you fill your time? Like you say, you get up every morning, these are the things you do.
Yeah,
And it becomes, again, we could talk about purpose. It becomes your purpose.
exactly.
And so as easy as, I'm going to say, I'll use the word easy, as it is to make that choice to have them move to a long-term care facility. The trade-off is that now you're having to find things to do with your
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah,
It's like getting your life back, but
yeah.
you have no life because you've
I gave up the
put
life to
yourself
do
from it.
this.
Yeah.
And so how do you reclaim this thing that you didn't even anticipate you were giving up? And suddenly there's just this gaping hole. Now, granted, even in that, it's not to say that mom and dad were in this long-term care facility and we never had anything else to do, because there was lots to do once they were there. It just wasn't 24/7.
Yeah.
And
It's more clerical, a lot of paperwork,
yeah,
right? And then I would say that in terms of getting them in there, and once they're in there, then it's actually just managing how it works,
yeah,
how they work within, how they look after your parents,
yeah,
because they have to get to know them too.
yeah,
So I mean, we were fortunate in the sense that, from the point that we were there and able to do that for them. There are people who go in who don't have support. And I can't imagine what it must be like. I mean, we talked about it on numerous occasions about there's, okay, let's flat out say it. There was a business opportunity.
Yeah.
In long-term care, because there's so many residents who don't have anybody advocating for them.
Yes.
Don't have anybody looking out for anything in their best interest.
Yeah.
Don't have anybody policing the people who are looking after them.
Yes.
And so that was that, because it's a steep curve there in terms of dealing with them. I mean, never mind logistically in terms of paperwork and this and that, but there's also how they do things.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So you had your routine at home with mom and dad.
Yeah.
Their routine is vastly different.
Yeah.
In the sense that it's like they're not given a choice. It's time to get up. It's time for breakfast.
Yeah.
And if the people who are in there are competent and capable of expressing their own opinions and their desires and wants, and no problem. If they're not, then they're just that residents are just told what to do.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing now. And that's not to say they're forced to do anything.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a case of, if support worker PSW in the facility is met with resistance,
yeah,
then it becomes a case of manipulation.
Yeah. 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 We were really, really. I mean, when I think of the possibilities, we were so fortunate. We were so fortunate that mom and dad, number one, were such delightfully wonderful people, really, when you meet them. And they really,
There was nobody who didn't like them.
Pardon?
You met them, you liked them.
Absolutely. And because we were there all the time. If you weren't there, I was there, and if I wasn't there, you were there. And so even late at night, like there'd be nights that I couldn't sleep, and I'm like, I'm going over to mom and dad's, and I would just go and sit in the chair at 10 o'clock at night and sleep. And they didn't question her, and even the
although the visiting hours were over at 9.
Yeah. But they would give us that little code and we could sneak in and stay with them just as well. And so that's what I mean about, being really, really fortunate. And then even some of the PSWs and nurses who became part of the family. Just a really genuinely wonderful experience in many, 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 many ways. And so for that, I'm so grateful. Because I've heard stories of it being a completely different circumstance and situation. And I'm
You read stories about it.
that's not our story.
You read stories about it. There was that was a time at that time too. You would read stories about in the newspaper about
Yeah.
things happening in long-term care facilities.
Yeah.
And that's what we look at. So and typically this happened to people who didn't have that support.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So completely relying on PSWs or people who don't know them or have just gotten to know them, which to some degree is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because people get to know that individual in whatever state of mind they're in, and there's no preconceived notion about who they were. It's for those individuals, it's who they are now, and that's who they get to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
interesting. We're gonna wrap up soon in this segment, and then in the next segment, I'd really like to talk a little bit more about the particulars of long-term care, and but is there a moment that you can share about this transitional experience that sort of sticks in your memory as significant?
well, because we're talking about parenting our parents,
Yeah.
And so once they moved into that long-term care facility, it changed. I just have to check because apparently my internet connection is unstable.
Oh.
Yeah, I've been running into issues with this thing.
Okay.
So, but what I'll say that once we got them in a long-term care facility, in this facility, it let's face it, it changed our roles in terms of how they're looked after. Now, I know I can say, I think I might have mentioned it in terms of toileting dad.
Yeah.
Because I've been doing it now. Now, once they went in there, I know mom was mom, so it was probably most of the nurses, but I can recall still doing it with dad, and just because we'd be out and about or just doing something, and but our roles changed, and now it became we used to take them out. When they're at home, we would take them out for entertainment or for activities in that. Well, in the long-term care facility, everything's brought to them.
Yes.
So they don't have to leave to go to church. Mom and dad were church goers, so every Sunday they went to a church service in the facility. Meals are done. They're told, their snacks are brought to them if they're sitting. So 3 meals a day, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then wherever they are in between, they'd be brought snacks. Mom typically stayed in her room. Dad, on the other hand, was a wanderer and just would go from floor to floor and look to see if he could help anywhere.
They got a cat. You remember they got the cat?
One per floor.
I found these pictures the other day in my like an old purse of dad with the cat. I'd forgotten about that cat, but he loved it.
He's an animal guy.
Absolutely.
So in terms of the facility itself, that was the biggest thing in terms of transition. Is it became now our roles changed. So that now we spent more time policing the people who were looking after. Right. So we had to learn the administrative things involved. Again, I'm going to be fortunate. I'm going to say we were fortunate because you were familiar with the system. And just by osmosis, I became familiar with the system.
But you were much more diplomatic than me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was like I was like a bull in a china shop. Like if somebody did something wrong, it was like and you're like, well, let me talk to them.
Wow, because I'm gonna say that changed over the years because I can remember I became this guy. I wasn't a diplomat. It was like I walked in the door. Oh, Hugh's here. Okay.
So you know what? That's probably more in line to. I think um, I think that was the result of being under pressure for so long, living with mom and dad. That the first little while, I was really explosive, and then after some time and some emotion regulation on my part, I was able to manage that a little better. But that first little while, yeah, it was bad.
Well, I'm
But
gonna say actually because we should really touch on this too with respect to them going in there, because culturally it was a big deal, like an absolutely huge deal. And I mean, aside from the fact that you put your parents in a home, aside from that angle, there was also your parents were in a home. Now, because the population, we're talking about where we live,
yeah,
the neighborhood we lived in, we grew up in, the neighborhood they were going to, and let's face it, the province,
yeah,
because of where we live, the city where we live, it was a predominantly white neighborhood.
yeah,
So the residence they went into was predominantly white,
yeah, yeah,
between staff and residents.
yeah,
So we used to have to. So when you go in, they've got a meal plan, right? So you get breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The only thing that we could really count on for them was Dad could always get his oatmeal in the morning.
always, yes,
Always had his oatmeal and a banana.
that's right.
Mom could. So in terms of you're being diligent with them in terms of getting, it's like, and that's the other thing. It with the long-term care, when we talk about, spoke about people who have them, who have people, residents who have advocates for them.
Yeah,
So when we walked in, we were able to say, this is what they like.
yeah,
They like this food. So the nice thing about it was they could tailor their meals to their
the
what they like,
preference.
right? Their preferences.
Yeah,
The issue was, you're feeding a population, and so that meant that the food had to be palatable for everybody,
yeah, yeah,
which meant there was no flavor,
yeah.
no spices, no that. So for the first little while, we would bring food in for them.
And to be honest, I
Like
would
that
bring
food.
it every Sunday. I would go in to do Sunday dinner after church with mom and dad
Yeah.
every Sunday, and I'd um, pick enough, like bring enough food that I could make their plates for dinner for 3 consecutive days, and me
Don't
myself and
forget, they were like, we got away with one there.
yeah, I know. 'Cause- and this is what I mean about being um, really grateful for the favor that we got,
Yeah.
because they wouldn't let this. I don't know that they would let this happen again.
I
Um,
think I think the standard was because there's a standard for how long food can stay in the fridge,
yes.
right? And I know wasn't any more than 48 hours.
Well, and
Why
so
is it
that
so?
was the system that Angela and I, or the kitchen lady, Angela, and I had, was that I would plate them for 3 days. One would stay, some would stay in the freezer. She would bring them out. I'd date them.
Mhm.
I'd wrap them, label them, date them, and then she'd bring them out of the freezer, defrost them for dinner. It was always the dinner meal that was going to be islandish.
Because you would bring in West Indian, like from the West Indian restaurant, the local West Indian,
Yeah, yeah.
that's where you bring the food
It
from,
was proper
right?
good food, Jamaican
And
food.
then I would bring in Swiss Chalet
Yes. Yeah.
because
That's
that
how
was
we
her
managed
fave.
food.
Mhm.
And then Tracy at the end there, she was doing the ice cubes,
And she,
um,
which?
or the gravy cubes. So
Oh
that,
yeah.
yeah, that at least, in the absence of doing dinner all the time, they could add the Jamaican flavor to whatever food that there, because that always had to have gravy.
And anytime Tracy came, she would bring food
Oh,
because she would just cook the meals.
yeah, yeah,
And so she would bring food with her, so they'd have a couple of days of flavorful food. Like what
yeah.
is flavorful for them anyway? So, but that was the biggest thing. It was just adjusting to the idea that we're not the primary caregivers.
Yeah.
And that was an adjustment, because so what we're really talking about is a role change for us. So we went from being kids, or children, to moving in and looking after them in their home, and absolutely being their parents. And managing their time and managing their activities, and having those arguments that you have with your kids.
Yeah.
And then when they go into the nursing home, now again, there's another role change.
Yeah.
So we're not having to police. Now we're not having to talk our parents into doing anything, because their activities are set. That was the best part. I mean, I was the best part about that thing. There's a full slate of activities every day for them.
Yeah.
There was, legislative things that were involved, which was physical activity. They also had, like I said, they had church every Sunday, but they had like musicians come in, and play and
pet therapy and
they didn't have any physical therapists, but they did have somebody who came in and worked with the residents, as in a group setting. And that, so
even the hairdresser, I remember the hair, mom's hair, and the hairdresser being downstairs,
and Dad went once. And then I became his hair cutter.
Exactly.
Well, I say me, but I was taught by one of the nurses in there, Jamaican man, who cuts hair. And I would go in and cut hair every once in a while, and I would be doing Dad's hair. And so when he was actually working on the floor. So it was funny because, here he is supposed to be looking after it, because I don't know what there were 18 rooms per wing.
Yeah.
Like 9 aside, and then nine aside on the other side as well.
Yeah.
So here he is, we got the door closed, and he's in there cutting Dad's hair. Right, because I was in there all the time. But West Indians, it's a West Indian thing, and so Dad was cutting his hair, and we're getting in. So because that was the other thing. So with Dad, I used to take him out to go get his hair cut. And so it didn't all end, because I just because even in this, we can just specifically to us. When they went in there, for us, this wasn't going to become a sentence for them.
No, exactly.
And so our attitude was, we will take them out for everything. So I know I would take their dentist was up the road. I said, you know what? I must have taken them both. Because at that time, that dentist, he had 2 offices, one in Oakville and one in the other place. And so we were able to bring them to the new place, both of them there. I know I could say that I'd taken them out for dinner. Swiss Chalet was their thing, so I'd taken them out for dinner a couple of times, and we would do that. So we liked the idea. It was great that they had that facility, but we also liked the idea of getting them out of there every once in a while. At the time, there was probably more. See, it's interesting because now it's not the same.
No.
But then, in terms of those activities, one of those activities when we talk about the group activities and that, one of those activities is the PSWs would take, especially in the summertime, they would take the residents outside into the patio. So everybody would get sun almost daily. And so that was one of the things. So they would do that for them.
And it was beautiful. The patio and the
patio, they had a barbecue.
80th birthday there. It was just stunning. And given the fact that those were things that were near and dear to Mom's heart, a nice garden and nice patio, and just the aesthetics of the place it was perfect. I remember also Dad going on that 3-day camping trip. Do you remember the camping trip?
No.
Oh, wow. They'd arranged, it was either 3 or 5 days. I think it was, I know it was 3 nights. So it must be 4 days. And they got on the bus and they went to that camping trip. And there were a number of different residents who went on this trip with the PSWs, and they had a great time. He went fishing. He,
That when he got that hat?
What was that?
That's when he got that hat.
That's when he got the hat.
Yeah. I remember that. With the
Yeah.
dress queen.
And again, out their window, because it was a new development and the whole area was new. He had new people to watch.
I was thinking about the number of times you just stand there and watch people outside.
Oh,
There was
yeah.
like, in that other residence, so you sit there and I watch them, and he's looking at their neighbors, like the people, because the houses across the street, and he just stand there and he'd just be watching, and he's like this, pointing. Just watching that one guy. You see him there?
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
So we were really, really fortunate in the space that we found for them, and as difficult as that was, as difficult as it was culturally, as you know, and outside of the home, getting backlash from other people of Caribbean descent who heard that this happened, and oh, well, you know, I would never do that with and it's like, you are free to make whatever choice works for you and your life and your circumstance and situation. And I'm not going to carry guilt because you wouldn't do what I had to do.
The only guilt comes from like mom saying, you know, I'll never go and I don't want to be there.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean that passes because when she was in, and I would say that it happens with every resident.
Yeah.
I have a friend who recently, within the last year or two, had admitted his father into a nursing home, and his dad didn't want to go. He said he was fortunate in that the person who was there was really good with his father.
Oh, right on.
And that made the transition really easy.
Yeah.
But initially, he was like he was ready to go home all the time. That was probably for him. It only lasted a week.
Okay, that's
mom
good.
and dad was a little different, but but that was driven by mom and her resistance to being anywhere but home.
Yeah. So on that note, I think next time we'll talk a little more about the logistics of that transition, and just what long-term care, what you can expect from long-term care, and I'll do a bit of research too to figure out what's actually happening now in terms of the transition into long-term care, and what you can expect, or what the process is to go through that, and then other options. We'll throw them down in the description below, and just sort of details and contact information and things, so that people can come here and have a resource if this is a particular situation, the circumstance that you're going through. I'll make sure to put things in the description below. On that note, please do subscribe to this channel. Please do ring the bell so that you're notified when there is a new episode uploaded. Every Sunday at 6 p.m., we upload an episode of Stories of Victory Over Adversity, in which parenting our parents is this particular part of the series. And every Wednesday at 6 p.m., we upload an episode in Cato's Cannabis Chronicles, where we're investigating different resources for people who are looking to optimize their health, whether they do or do not use cannabis or CBD oil, learning what the best ways are to optimize your health in doing so is the whole discussion on Wednesdays. So Stay tuned. Huey, as always, an absolute delight to share with you and to talk
Great.
with you.
Thank you,
And
Kimberly.
I thank you
Wow.
so much for being here and sharing so openly.
All right. See y'all next week.
See y'all next week. Be well. Know that you are loved and greatly